What is up, Rad Potential YouTube? Welcome to today's video. I'm Mr. Rad, and we are slightly disappointed in the performance of the hybrid still, but we have a new direction, at least for now, that we're going to try a few new things. So in this video, I am going to be reinstalling my 5-into-1 header, but I'm going to change it kind of how I wanted to from the beginning. So the last video, we figured out that the engine was not blown up, which was ultimately my biggest worry after running the RX8 short apex seals over a peripheral RX7 style housing. So we know that 90 psi compression, it should make some decent power, at least make 150. Considering we know that this car with 70 psi of compression, so low compression needs rebuilt, made 130 horsepower. So we've got some sort of issue with the hybrid setup, and let's try to figure it out. So this header flows a ton of air, right? It has a bunch of holes in it. It's got a lot of tubes, and ultimately, in an NA application, this is way too much air. So we're getting more air out than more air in. There's no real equilibrium there. There's no balance. Thus, the car is angry and not making any power. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this center port Siamese runner. I'm going to chop it off, and I'm going to cap it. We're going to weld a little tubes plug on the end of it, and then I'm going to weld this hole shut on the main runner. What that's going to leave us with is 4 ports. So we're going to have the outer 2 Renesas ports and then the 2 RX7 peripheral ports. I'm going to put it back on the car like that, and we're going to see how it drives on the street. Now, Ernie at the dyno, he's 3 hours away. Now, I could go out there and spend another 6 or 7 hours of my time to test just that change, or we drive around the street, we'll use my well-calibrated butt dyno to figure out if it's faster. If it noticeably improves, then I want to try something else. I'm going to take some stainless steel I've got over here, and I want to block or restrict the flow out of the RX8 ports to where we're mostly getting dialed down into just the RX7 ports. And I might even just block them off completely. So what I'm thinking about doing with that is I'm going to take a piece of plate, and I'm literally just going to weld this hole shut right here. The center port, I really want to weld it shut down lower. I don't know if that's going to make a difference or not, but I feel like just capping it off up here is going to make a bunch of weird stuff happen inside the engine, and capping it off down here might make all that stuff happen down in the tube versus right at the engine. So I don't know. Drop in the comments below. We're going to do some science. So I've read y'all's comments on the dyno video and the what's next video, and I'm going to turbo this thing. But we're literally like some header changes away from learning some stuff. So let's learn some stuff. So I don't really see a reason to necessarily overcomplicate this. So I've got an old washer from like the rally car. I'm gonna weld that on there, and I'm just gonna throw it on the ground first, but fill in the hole in the center, so that'll cover up this one. And then this side, I'm honestly halfway tempted to just slit this and hammer it closed and then just weld the end of it. So instead of like actually making a circle, but I'll see if I can find a washer to go on it. Too small? Oh, just right. So I'll get these burned in here, and then we will put it back on the car and fire this baby back up, see how it sounds and or runs, if it runs better or worse. Y'all would think I'd be a pro at doing this by now. Look at that. And that was easy. All right, here we can see we've got capped off, so that's the center port completely capped. I'll button this thing up. Should be ready to rock. Everything is buttoned up. We know it's gonna start. It's an RX8. How about that idle? I feel like it does sound a little different. Obviously that center port isn't recirculated now, so it's just capped off. Might have a slight spitty exhaust leak. But also that header's just mild steel. It's not super thick stainless, so it's gonna have a little bit of a tinny note to it. Ready to take this thing for a rip with the center port disabled. We're gonna go ahead and fire up VersaTuner, which I got running here, and I'm going to log everything, make sure everything still looks good. Obviously we were playing with a bunch of fueling stuff, so this could change some stuff if we start to get like real crisp exhaust flow, and we'll see what happens. Got that nice brappy 1000 RPM idle. I like a little bit higher idle than that. Does seem to rev a little bit happier, so we might be on the right track. I had it in gear, so it was doing its hunt thing. I'm like, man, now we got a TPS hunt? What is this, a Series 4 FC? Or a GS LSE? It still does sound super crispy on part throttle like a RX-7 does, which is just so good. Alright, so we're already up to 10. I was letting it idle while I was setting up cameras and stuff, so let's go ahead and log a rip here. Still just has no power from 5,000 to 6,500. I bet that's probably when it's experiencing like the most turbulence in that exhaust, and it just can't get the flow out, or there's like not enough back pressure to create the correct amount of, you know, airflow in equal airflow out science. It does sound weird though. Like it just sounds different than any, it doesn't sound like an RX8 and it doesn't sound like an RX7, so that's kind of interesting. And it sounds different than it did before with that center port blocked off. Chill right here, let's go look at the log. A little bit lean, kind of in the 13s. As we're going up here, it's fattening up. Man, still getting really fat. Right at 6,700 RPM, we're getting really rich. So down into the 11s and the 10s still. And then the load shoots up because it kind of figures its life out now. A little bit different. The graph is a little bit different. I'll screenshot the graph from the dyno and then put this graph on the screen as well. But you can see kind of where this little hump is picking up and leaning out the air-fuel ratio, where the car is now stabilizing the exhaust flow and then starting to make power. And you can probably hear it in the pole there. You know, even though my RPM starts climbing, it's definitely loaded up, engine not happy, and then it cleans up and pulls past. This exact spot is at 6,800 RPM or so, is where it really starts to pick up and pull nicer. So we'll do another pull. I don't think this is the move. It's definitely not making 200 horsepower or even 150. It's still slower than it was before. So we'll do another pull, and then we're gonna go back to the shop, take this exhaust off again, and we're gonna restrict the front iron and the rear iron Renesis ports, if not completely block them off. We'll just see what I got laying around the shop to see what I can make work effectively with not like completely ruining my flange, because I'd like to still be able to, you know, maybe use that flange for a turbo header at some point. Still just isn't the happiest camper, you know? Not too stoked. It runs, but it's not too stoked. All right, header off, take two. So you can see here, we just welded this shut, we welded this shut. Honestly, I would say maybe a 5 to 8% improvement in power. Definitely butt dyno plus 7,000 as y'all saw. Picked up a little bit of power, but we're not like, this ain't no 200 horsepower, guys. I know what 200 horsepower feels like, and this does not feel like my full Bridgeport 12A. The full Bridgeport 12A was a ripper and would gap the crap out of this thing. So what I'm thinking now is I want to modify this header just a little bit more. So I really want to block off the outer ports. And what I'm thinking is I don't want to like completely destroy this flange, guys, because I may make a turbo manifold out of this flange eventually, so I can chop this back off and reuse something. But just like we welded washers on these other things, I'm thinking to just weld a washer or a plate in here and just block off each port inside the hole. So just right in there. Also, my gasket came off very not complete this time. So we're just gonna lather the crap out of this when I put it back on with some of that exhaust cement stuff and hope it doesn't leak enough to like completely destroy all our power. But here's what I'm thinking. Plate in here, weld it in, but not completely. So like it's still gonna allow a little bit through. I'm not gonna go through and burn that whole thing in. I just wanna really restrict the flow through those two ports and focus the flow out of the center. The one thing that does kind of suck is that when I built this header, these runners are 1 3/4 inches. So I sized them down from like, Racing Beat recommends a 2-inch primary runner on basically anything that you're gonna make some horsepower out of for RX-7s. Hopefully that little bit of restriction doesn't cause a huge issue, but I think it's still gonna be way better than the fact that there's no back pressure right now. All right, guys, so this is header modified version 6. We've got both ports sealed up at the engine. I'm gonna slap some glue on this thing, we'll put it back on, take this thing for another test drive. I am getting pretty good at putting these headers on and off, you know, 17 times down. Honestly, I should have just chopped these tubes off. It would have made it way easier to put in here. But the thing looks so cool with 5 runners on it. Don't want this header falling off now. I'm sure this lift is giving you guys a new perspective of how tall I am. A lot of times when I meet people in person, they're like, holy cow, you're way taller than you look in the videos. Well, I'm 6'4". The lift only goes up 1 more height. All right, down we go. Ready for test drive number 2, right after I put this wheel on and torque the lug nuts. Can't forget to torque your lug nuts till the wheel flies off, flies down the road past you. It's just a terrible day. See, it's an RX8, guys. It starts every time. All right, well, we're back on VersaTuner, back in the car and back ready to go test out a header. Let's see, seems to be happier idling. We've got a much richer air-fuel ratio than we did before, so at idle. Keep in mind, I haven't changed anything fuel-wise. We're just looking at what we've got. Sick. It honestly seems to rev a lot better. There's that nice brappy little part throttle. Love it. It does feel a little bit better. It doesn't really feel 200 horsepower better, but it feels better. All right, let's get a good old log going here. Well, 1, 2, 3. Oh yeah, that's what we want to see right there. Oh, and we got the partial throttle braps. Okay, so I don't think it's making 200 horsepower, that's for sure. Definitely not 200 horsepower, but it's definitely not making 100. So I feel like it pulls way harder up top than it did 100% before we put the hybrid in. So that's a huge win. We'll pull over up here and look at the log. It's probably still running pretty rich if I had to bet, but we'll check the log just to be sure. Find a nice spot in the shade. It's like it's like not brapping, like bop, 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 hard enough for you to know that it has a gnarly port, but it's also like not slow enough that it's a TPS deal. If you've ever been around old RX-7s, you know. TPS out of whack, and then it's like doing all sorts of weird stuff. So it's our first gear pull, basically from this line to this line. Boom, shift to second, goes back up, and then we coast it out. So the yellow line on here is AFR, green line is absolute load, and the orange or brown line is our RPM. So let's just kind of check. We've got this, what looks like a pretty good lean spike right here, where we go 1.3, and that's right at 4,700. So the lean spike right there is where the SSV is opening. Let's see, we go a little further. Let's look at this rich spot right here. We're at 0.75, rich at 6,400. So I feel like the hybrid is still getting some sort of weird like exhaust flow issue at this point, because why would it still be super rich even from just a stock RX8? Like, we've been pulling tons of fuel out of this, not so much adding fuel in. So if you think we're making more power, we're going to want to consume more fuel. So there's still some weird stuff going on at 6,500. However, right here, we get back into a 0.96 AFR right at 7,300. So that's 0.96 is probably 13.8 or something like that, or almost 14. So it's pretty lean right there, which means we're definitely starting to pick up some power, and you can see the load getting up towards 1. So super pumped. That was first gear, second gear, a little bit more load, and the AFR is still lean, 0.87. Actually, that's kind of about where we want to be. Load comes down a little bit up there, but that's up top. So same thing reflected. SSV opening here, we get a lean spike, and then, you know, keep tripping. Or actually, no, here's where the SSV opened. That's where the SSV opened. That's 5,200. So shift, SSV kicks right back up, and we go right back into accelerating. Interesting. So I don't know. You guys are gonna have to really convince me in the comments below to take this back to the dyno. I think it's I don't think we're gonna crack 200 horsepower like this. I think there might be a little bit more tuning, and not tuning the computer, but tuning as in like in the exhaust and things we can probably do to improve it. I'm curious now if like welding those outer Renesas MSP ports shut but still having a smaller runner on the RX-7 ports is restricting us. The other thing that I didn't do whenever I built this particular hybrid, so I did not port the GSLSE exhaust ports. I cleaned them up, but I didn't open them up. So I wanted to kind of like keep them restricted because I knew I was going to be using all 5. So in turn, we could probably optimize this engine by making the GSLSE exhaust ports bigger and then setting up a header exactly just for the 2 center peripheral ports versus even trying to work through the actual MSP stuff. So let's test this. We set up launch control, which means that if I have my clutch pushed in and floor it, it shouldn't go above 6,000 RPM. Okay, so it revved all the way to 8,600. I bet that my clutch switch is broken, and that's why this thing is hunting. There was a comment about that on one of the other videos. So we'll see if the computer, we'll just take a little rib down the back road here and see if the computer livens this tune up a little bit for us. We didn't really adjust the AFRs too much on the dyno where it should be like crazy out of whack for just us changing this. So it would probably be like 5% different. It's so weird. My RX8 Love wants to drive between 6 and 7,500 because like the green car likes to kind of nose over a little bit past 8,000. I really only use above 8,000 like if I need to not shift between the corners, or you know, I guess we kind of drive up that high too, but this thing just falls right on its face at 6,000. So oh, gotta put it in gear, dummy. So that's 6,000. You can hear it start to pick up right as I get to like 6,800, but at 6,000 it's still just like it's definitely going to be a race car engine, guys, because this one at 5,000 is just not stoked. It's just like, we're going to want to be like in second gear because I don't have super grippy tires, so I can't just like turn in with this thing. You can feel it just picks the power up at 7,000. Just picks up. Yeah, it's definitely going to be one of those where, like, if you take your hybrid to the track, or at least this one, you're going to want to say 6,500 and up. It's just a dog at 6,000. We know it'll spin the tire a little bit. Yeah, it's just not fired up. Interesting. It does sound great though. Like, it has a different tone, or at least maybe just having not the cat section in the mid pipe, you know, like makes it sound a little bit different, but it does definitely not sound like an RX8, so that's an interesting situation. But I'm gonna cruise this thing back to the shop, guys. I want you guys to drop in the comments what you want to see next. Like I said, y'all are gonna have to really convince me to put this on the dyno. It's definitely not making 200 horsepower. I would bet butt dyno like 150, because it's not really pulling any faster than my green one does, and the green one's pretty wore out too, so I don't know. Just like we talked about in the other video, you know, my real desire for this car is to get it over 200 horsepower without spending a bajillion dollars, you know. And honestly, probably for some RX8 owners out there, building a whole new hybrid engine and then having a custom flange and a header done and all that might be a little bit, you know, out of the wheelhouse for really, like, we're talking at the peak of this engine's performance, the hybrid stuff, like healthiest compression, the whole deal, it might make 200. But over the life of your car, right, like, you're gonna see the engine, it's gonna start to lose compression over time, you're gonna start to lose horsepower, etc. So it's gonna come down to one of those things where, like, it might not make 200 forever, you know, versus like if we go turbo 8 would definitely be something where as the engine gets more tired, we run more risk of blowing it up, but as the engine gets more tired, we can just amp the boost up a little bit and keep the horsepower there. Plus, you're driving around on a stock Renesis. Most of the time, you're not in boost, so it would be one of those things where, honestly, it would probably run better. But anyways, I'll stop rambling. Y'all jump in the comments below. Tell me what you want to see next. If it's something that's reasonably attainable, i.e. let's just turbo the Renesis, or if you just want to see me take this back to the dyno, then that's going to happen in the very next video. But I can tell you that there is another project that I've been waiting to start. Got everything ready to start it. We just got to start going, and I'd be excited to start that project too. So definitely let me know in the comments below, and we'll just keep on keeping it rad and trying stuff. I'm honestly pumped we tried this. So another video, you know, the compression test data made me feel a little bit better about this, and I'll be interested to compression test it again. You know, I'm probably going to leave it all put together like this and drive it around for a little while, unless it's like take the car apart, go turbo is the most liked comment. So let me know. Keep it rad. We'll see y'all in the next one. Thank you guys so much for watching the videos. The yellow car hybrid videos have been crushing, and it's so much fun to see you guys and me enjoy making the content. So thank you guys, and a huge thanks to the patrons, because without them a lot of this wouldn't be possible. So thank y'all so much for watching. Let's see if I can leave my transmission on the ground right here. You think we just do like a little launch? I guess if I had launch control it'd be at 6,000. So all right, rally launch. Alright, that's about all she's got. Peace, guys.